Hello, I'm Locke Meredith. I'd like to invite you to join me on the next Legal Lines, where I'm pleased to have back on the show Livingston Parish Sheriff Jason Ord. Jason's going to talk to us about the huge growth in Livingston Parish. It's increased up by 3 to 4 times what it was in the last decades. He's going to talk to us about the stress that is put on the resources of the Sheriff's Department, but how they still have low crime rate and how they have an excellent outreach to the community, the eyes and ears of the Sheriff's Department. So join us on the next Legal Lines with Livingston Parish Sheriff Jason Ord.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith with a Legal Lines tip for you. Buy Insurance. Why? Insurance stands for uninsured or underinsured insurance coverage, and it's the only insurance you will buy that protects you in the event you're involved in an automobile collision and the other party who hit you and is at fault has either no insurance or minimal insurance. Remember, in Louisiana, we only require to get a license and drive that you have at least $10,000 in coverage. So if you have $100,000 in injuries, but they only have $10,000 in coverage, you're out 90 grand, unless you've purchased Insurance. So number one, buy Insurance. You can waive it or select lower limits, but do not do that. So the Legal Lines tip from me, Locke Meredith, to you is buy Insurance.
This has been Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, welcome to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and I'm very pleased to have back on the show Livingston Parish Sheriff Jason Ord. Jason, it's great to see you again.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
It's hard to believe it's been 2 years since we first got together. You were running for sheriff of Livingston Parish. You won handily, and you hit the ground running. But before we kind of get into that, just tell folks a little bit about your background real fast.
Well, I've been at the sheriff's office for about 22 years. I was actually born in Livingston Parish and raised right there in Satsuma, which is a lot of people that pass through I-12, they'll see the Satsuma Coyo exit. And, but I've been there, right at, like I said, 22 years, started out as a prison guard.
I love your story about that.
Yeah, worked my
On
way
the
up.
bottom off.
That's right, worked my way up. I worked uniform patrol with supervision over patrol. Was moved into detective division, did investigation for a while, then training, was actually ran our SWAT team for the most of my career. Sheriff Graves was the sheriff at the time and asked me to start moving into administration, doing the PIO work, which is the public information officer, dealing with the news media. And shortly thereafter, he promoted me to his chief deputy, and here I am as the sheriff of Livingston Parish.
And he was a great sheriff.
He was a great sheriff and mentor for me, absolutely.
And I think he started working when his daddy, Odom Graves, was the sheriff.
Right, his actual daddy was Odom Graves. He was the sheriff at the time. He actually hired me to go to work in the prison.
Well, tell him hello for all of us,
We'll
and
do
thank
that.
you for so many years of dedicated service. Well, so you were elected, it's 2 years later. Livingston Parish is the number 2, sometimes I think number 1 fastest growing parish in the state of Louisiana. So I know you've got increased demand with increased population. Tell the folks about that. Yeah,
we do. We're usually neck and neck with Ascension Parish as far as our growth, and but we have a great school system, and we have a reputation of a safe community, which draws a lot of people to our parish.
And I liked you had your mission on your website, you know, to provide safe place
and that's
for
what we want
families.
to do. We want to provide a safe community. We want to be able to go along with our good school system that actually provides a great education for our kids, and we work with them hand in hand. So we want people to move here that they're looking for that, and I feel that we have a great trust in our community, and they see that too. But with the growth comes a lot of challenges, and so we're challenged every day to try to meet the needs of our citizens. So it's just we just grow so fast, and then of course your department's trying to keep up with it. So it's tough to do, but we do everything we can with what we have.
Well, and what you have, your revenues, as I understand it, around 25 million?
Around 24-25 million, and you compare that to Ascension, which is they're close to 44-45 million.
Wow, that's
a
big difference.
It is a big difference.
Same population.
Roughly the same population. So it's a lot of demand there. So we do the best that we can do with what we have.
And how many employees do you now have? Because the sheriff's office is really like this monster business.
It is. We have 300 employees, and now when you think 300, a lot of people go, that's a lot of deputies. Well, they're not all actually enforcement. You have your tax office, which is a lot of our tax collectors. A lot of ladies working there, and it becomes a really busy time of the year between January and the May area. I mean, they're nonstop, doing their tax collection, and we have from sheriff sales, and we have the data processing, which actually cuts checks to all this different little deals with and you have the detention center, you have your patrol division, you have the detective. So it's a lot of different
like
departments
an octopus with
within
a bunch
it.
of tentacles.
It is.
And the way I've kind of organized it in my head is you kind of got the criminal side and the civil side. And
right.
under the criminal side, you've got kind of law enforcement, and then you have the judicial system. Explain
Right.
the law enforcement side.
Well, your law enforcement side, you have a lot of fingers. You not only have just like motor division, they do traffic. Traffic also takes care of all the funerals in the parish.
Wow.
So you know, we have a loved one that's passed. Our deputies show up and they make sure they get a good funeral escort. So we have the patrol division that answers your calls. We have the Marine Division, which actually works on the boats on every single weekend. Them guys are out there.
Because y'all have, what, 100 miles of water?
100 miles of water. We have more waterways, inner waterways, than any other parish in Louisiana. So it's a big, huge responsibility. A lot of people come to, and they want to have a good time on the waterways and stuff,
Right.
and we just want to make that safe.
Right.
Of course, that takes a lot of boats. So we work really well with the Wildlife and Fishery and Ascension Sheriff's Office, St. John, Tangipahoa. All those sheriff's offices actually share the waterways in that area, Lake Marpaul, Diversion Canal area. So, but we have, of course, you have your detective divisions, which is made up of narcotic, burglary, juvenile division, and your regular detective. So that's one of the, and every division is the heart of our operation. You know, you got to be careful which one you say, but and also communications. Our communication is actually the communication district. We not only take care of dispatching law enforcement, but we also dispatch fire and medical.
Really?
And we have 911 operators that actually work in
well,
that.
And 80%, I think you told me that there's, what, is it 11 cities or 8 cities within Livingston Parish, but 80% of the population does not live within the city limits.
That's right. They live outside the city limits.
And
but,
so y'all are dealing with the vast majority of the population. And I remember reading that y'all receive 30,000 to 40,000 calls a month.
That's right.
Unbelievable.
It is. It is just, it's a lot. But now the cities within the parish are very, very much a friend of ours.
Oh, yeah.
And they actually help us catch calls sometimes. We get so overwhelmed that you may wind up with a Denham Springs officer at your door or a Port Vincent officer at your door because you called us.
Excellent.
Just because we want to try to get there as quick as we can, and a lot of times we'll dispatch our local law enforcement officers just because our deputies
so y'all
are
are
so
sharing
tired
resources.
So sharing as much resources as we can.
Excellent. All right. And then on the judicial side, you as the sheriff provide security for the judges and what
Right,
else?
we do the all judges to make sure they have a bailiff. You know, law actually requires they have a bailiff with them. We also make sure that we have ladies in the courtroom to work with the court. We have ladies that are at the tax office. When you have to actually get fined and you have to pay your ticket, you actually walk up to the counter and we're there for that. Of course, sheriff's cells and your civil department, whenever the civil court goes and they have to maybe the divorce papers or a restraining order, protective order, anything of that nature goes to us and we have to serve them. So
interesting. Now, what about the prison system? Because that's a whole nother.
And that's a whole nother one. We have our beds are just under 700.
And I remember that was a brand new facility
Yes,
two years ago.
Brand new
right?
facility. We actually used that facility during Gustav. We used that facility to actually facilitate all of the military and other agencies coming from out of state, and they actually slept there. So we had every one of our beds, which was like
nice use.
670 beds were actually used by law enforcement, fire, military. They were able to actually stay there.
And you said it's packed to the brim already.
It stays full, and it's a constant juggling act.
So you indicated because of that, you've implemented a new work release program.
We did. We implemented a new work release program, and it's basically a reentry program. And what we try to do with this program is we want these inmates to get out and actually and stop stealing and start actually being a good citizen and productive and things of that nature. So this program is designed to within 3 years of their out date. Department of Corrections actually will go through here and they will approve whether or not they're eligible.
These are nonviolent folks.
Right, nonviolent, and they're eligible to work this. We put them into work with some local business, and they provide them with a job. And usually,
they come out productive.
Right, usually they come out productive, and they got a job and they get out a little bit of money, and they don't come back in jail.
Well, we'll continue this on the next segment with Livingston Parish Sheriff Jason Orr. We'll be right back.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith with a Legal Lines tip for you. Are you thinking about filing a claim or a lawsuit because of injuries or damages or business loss? Then you need to see an attorney. Again, remember, knowledge is power, and you often can see an attorney at least on the first visit free. Educate yourself. Figure out what the consequences are of the decisions you make. It's very important as to when you file a claim in a lawsuit. For example, in an automobile accident or injury case, you have 1 year from the date of the accident to file the suit. If you do not, your claim is over with. In a business claim, or typically a contractual claim, it can range from a year to 10 years. It's very important that you know your rights. So the Legal Lines tip from me, Locke Meredith, to you is, if you're contemplating filing a claim or a suit, see an attorney.
This has been Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. Again, very pleased to have back on the show Sheriff Jason Ard. He is the sheriff for Livingston Parish. Jason, thanks for doing the show again. Let's just kind of dive right back in. We talked about the huge increase in population. I think in the 90s you told me it was like, what, 30,000, 25?
30, 40, 50,000 at the most. And
now we're at 150
Yeah,
at
we're
least.
up there.
Okay, so huge increase in population.
We've seen a lot of that from Hurricane Katrina, which a lot of these surrounding parishes seen the same thing I did.
Right, exactly. And of course, there's always a percentage of the population. I've read, 8%, 10% of the population does crime, but you have an increase in population, you're going to have an increase in crime.
Right.
Tell the folks about the various kind of crime parameters, crime against people versus property, violent crime, that type of
We're
stuff.
very fortunate in Livingston Parish. We don't have a lot of, crime against the person. We have very low murder rate. And usually if you see a homicide in Livingston Parish,
it's one a year, maybe.
Maybe, and sometimes we'll have more than that, but it's usually going to be domestic related. If you usually rapes that we have unfortunately some of those, but those are going to be domestic related. So they're still a crime. We'll still investigate them and treat them just like we would anything else. But what we see most of, and I've seen this as the chief deputy, and when I was coming in as sheriff, we were already implementing a plan to attack the issue, which was the crime against property. We had just a tremendous amount of thefts and burglaries, and it was just overwhelming our detective division.
You think driven by drug?
Oh, well, absolutely. Most of that's all driven by drugs, and so you have your narcotics and all that's your narcotic division and your burglary division would work together. So we created a burglary division and beefed up our narcotic division. So you actually have 6 agents now that all they do is narcotics, narcotic investigation. I have 6 agents, and all they do is burglary theft investigations. So we were able to target that. And just to show you the stats on the burglary division for the year 2012-2013, which was the first year I was officially took office, they made 700 arrests, burglary theft arrests.
Wow.
So when you talk theft and burglary, every single arrest you can almost attach anywhere between 10 or 20 burglaries and thefts solved.
To one person.
One person, because they made just recently we had 36 vehicle
I remember
burglaries.
reading about it.
We arrested 3 people where they're responsible for those 36 burglaries. So that's a lot of solved burglaries. We was able to recover over $1 million in property. We were able to return a lot of that property back to the victims, which is a huge plus. I mean, that's what you always want to do, is be able to give something back. A lot of times when people become a victim, it's their property may be of value to someone else, but it's just that sentimental. That was my grandmother's ring. It may have only been worth really $20, but to me it's worth millions.
Right.
So it's just nice to be able to return that property.
Excellent. I actually read too that your arrests range per year around what, roughly 2,500 to 2,700 arrests per year?
Oh yeah, see, and what I'm telling you is the stats from the burglary division. We're not counting our uniform patrol. Uniform patrol they're just phenomenal. They not only do burglary arrests, theft arrests, but they are a huge front line when it comes to narcotics. That we have a zero tolerance. If they catch you with a seed of marijuana, you're going to get arrested for it.
Okay.
You're going to get charged. And we've always done that, but that's why we have the community we have.
Now, if they're arrested, is there room to go ahead and put them in a jail, or is that not required? I don't know.
Yeah, what we usually do, depending on the circumstances, sometimes we'll cut them a misdemeanor summons, but which is still counted as an arrest. We won't actually bring them to the detention center. Of course, all felonies you're actually brought to the jail. Some misdemeanors we allow them to basically just cut them a summons just because of the population. So that does become an issue when you come to the population of your jail.
You mentioned too in our discussions that you've got a new software that's helping you kind of keep up with where the needs of the sheriff's department are, so you can allocate resources where they need to go.
Yeah, we did. We actually used to do everything paper. I mean, like handwriting reports and all that. We changed that. We brought in the ADSI report writing system, which actually EBR East Baton Rouge Sheriff's Office, they use that now. Sid Gautreaux use it. Some of his deputies came over and provided us information on the program. We liked it. And basically what this program allowed us to do was have real-time information. And now when you're dealing with a suspect, you actually know that the deputy that worked the day before you dealt with him too, because when you enter that name, it'll tell you, and you can read his report of what he may have gave this guy a warning. So now you know that, hey, I need to deal with him,
right,
as well as all the agencies we have, Denham Springs, Walker, Port Vincent, Albany, Springfield. We have all these agencies that work with us. We dispatched them, but we had no way of knowing that they may have warrants on this certain person without actually asking them. So now they're linked into this system and they enter their warrants. So now when we pull that suspect over, not only do I know if Livingston may want him, but I also can tell you that maybe Denham Springs or Albany PD may need this guy.
Is there that kind of arrangement with, say, East Baton Rouge Parish?
Well, we actually are linked in with Baton Rouge, so we actually now have it to where we can look into each other's. And it's pretty neat because you have to use your own password. So if anybody goes in and doing things they're not supposed to do, it's got its own tattletale system.
You mentioned also that there's continuing education required of the deputies so that they're up to speed on techniques and issues.
We actually had a meeting today before I came here about the new state mandated requirements on your police officers and your sheriff deputies, where they have to do a mandatory 20 hours in service training a year, which is puts a burden on administration, but at the same time the state is making sure, which I'm all about it, make sure they're getting the right training and the updated continuing education that they need.
And we've talked about it. It's so important because, for example, Senator Dan Clare was a prosecutor in New Orleans.
Right.
If he doesn't have the evidence to put a criminal away, it doesn't matter ultimately that he was arrested. So it's so important that your guys know what they're doing, so they collect the evidence, do it properly, make the arrest proper and all of that, so that they can get these guys off the street who are violent or repeat offenders.
And it's so much more. A lot of people look at law enforcement and say, oh, they just have to know how to drive a car and shoot a weapon. It's a lot more than that, and they do. You can't give them enough continuing education. I wish we had more time to give them even more training. And they mandate the chiefs and the sheriffs as well. We have mandatory continuing education. We have to get 12 hours. I think the chiefs have to get somewhere around 20 or 24 hours a year. So wow, it's a lot in there, but it's also good training. It's good information that actually comes out of it.
And you said the deputies will not receive a promotion raise unless they've attended the education.
I have an in-house where I do a mandatory leadership program that we're implementing now. If you don't complete this program, then you're not eligible for maybe a pay raise or a promotion. The state actually has. They basically you're certified to be a police officer, and I think if you don't get your 20 hours for that year, they'll suspend you for 90 days. So you're no longer a certified police officer, which means that either you get your 20 hours, or you have to return and go back to the whole 12-week academy again.
Wow. Okay, that'll motivate you, won't it?
Right.
I know that one of the big issues for you when you were taking over as sheriff was to communicate effectively with the community, because a lot of times they're the eyes and ears of the police force, and y'all want good, trusting relationships. So let's discuss that on the next segment. Okay. This is Locke Meredith with Legal Lines, and my guest, Sheriff Jason Ard, Livingston Parish. We'll be right back.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith with a Legal Lines tip for you. Don't be frightened or wary of our legal system. It's a good system and it's fair. Typically the process is, whether it's a business claim or a personal injury claim or a contractual claim, is that each party presents their evidence that supports their position. Hopefully, if you have reasonable parties, they negotiate and they settle. If you cannot resolve the matter that way, you then file suit. Attorneys become involved, typically. They collect information, exchange it, ultimately negotiate, and hopefully settle it. If you cannot, then the judge or jury, they decide the issue for you. You present your evidence to them at trial, and then they make the decision. Usually it's a very good decision. The system is effective. So my Legal Lines tip from me, Locke Meredith, to you is trust the legal system.
This has been Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. Again, I'm Locke Meredith, and again, very pleased to have back on the show Sheriff Jason Ard. He is Sheriff for Livingston Parish. Let's dive back in, Jason. You implemented, as I understand it, a kind of a forced focus on communicating with with your population in Livingston. Tell the folks about that.
Well, you know, communication is a huge asset. I mean, you have to be able to communicate things to your community as well as your deputies. And one of the things that we implemented was the social media, Facebook page. And a lot of people kind of frown on it when you first come out with it. It was kind of new, but
now everybody's got it.
And that's just the way a lot of people communicate.
Yeah.
You know, I don't necessarily agree with it sometimes, but at the end of the day, you want to do you have to reach out to the community. And during Isaac, Hurricane Isaac come through, we really used social media as much as we could. We had a lot of people who didn't have electricity, they couldn't watch TV. All they had were their cell phones. They had nothing else. So it was a way that we could get that information out to them. It also became a great tool to communicate with even our news media. They were actually drawing information
coming to you for
as the photos and things of that nature. It actually even got even bigger whenever the ice storm come here, and it was just phenomenal to see the way we were able to utilize it. And it was very scary, the road conditions. I mean, it was just dangerous. We was trying to put everything we could out on the social media to say, look, do not get on the roadways. Please don't. Well, your news media, they couldn't get out either. I mean, it was just too dangerous. So I asked the deputies to take some photos of these icy bridges. If you had a crash, which we had several of those, I want you to show those pictures to people, let them know how dangerous this is. And we started doing that, and it started paying off.
It was effective.
It was very effective. And and then your news outlets called. The news outlets would call and say, look, Sheriff, our guy, we can't get out. Can we use some of these photos? Well, absolutely. I mean, we want to get the message out. Right, we're helping everybody. So it actually really paid off. And we went from having around 5,000 or 6,000 followers to we're up to 20,000 already.
Wow!
For the agency our size, we're
on
like
Facebook.
You know, on Facebook, we're number one, and so it's a great tool to have to be able to communicate with our community.
I know also that you have implemented a program where it provides notice of emergencies.
Right.
Explain to folks about that.
It's the first call system, and basically what we do is I'll do a recording, or I'll have my PIO, which is Lori Steele, we'll have her do a recording, and what we'll do is basically anybody that is signed up for this program, you can go on our website and sign up your cell phone.
What's the website?
It's lpso.org.
Okay.
And you can go there, you sign up for first call, and we'll notify you on any kind of emergency.
And it's all kinds of devices, right?
All kinds, right.
I mean, email or your phone?
Either way, it'll ask you fill it in, and we from ice storms, I'll do a recording and tell you road conditions, or on this particular deal with the ice storm, I beg people, please stay off the road. Just not too long ago, we actually had a homicide we was working where we had some roommates got into it. We believe there was some drugs involved, what have you, and someone was actually killed. The subject actually ran into the woods, so we had a perimeter set up. So we got to use first call. I started putting information out, giving
now
description.
Now they became your eyes and ears too.
Right. I gave them the description of suspect. We haven't caught him yet. I gave them updates about every hour. Some of them got aggravated, but we were able to narrow it down to the actual area. But because we called so much, some of them got aggravated, but at the same time they appreciated it. And then the next morning, one of those one of the citizens in there said, hey, the guy you called, that's the description the sheriff called, this is him, he's walking down the road. Called the deputies in the area, and they were able to put him in jail.
Excellent.
So.
All right, well, let's talk about, I know that's required equipment. I know you've recently purchased, I think, a helicopter and other equipment.
Right, well, actually, the helicopter, we actually have, Sheriff Graves brought the aviation division, and we actually utilize that a lot because of the waterways.
Right.
And it's very important because you'll be surprised how many people that'll get in a boat and not realize that it needs gas. They just do that, or they may actually.
I might make them sit out there, Jason.
But they'll call, and using aviation, actually a helicopter, you're talking about a maximum of 30 minutes to actually get to it, put it in the air, and find someone that's lost or stranded, or even a crash. In a boat in the water, it may take them 30 minutes just to find that. It's so quick, and it just saves us so much manpower. And not only do I utilize it, right, it's a huge resource for not only me, but the Livingston Parish Sheriff uses it. And we helped some of the homicides, and I know St. James had one recently with a little girl. Right. We were able to help that sheriff and give them a bird's eye view. So it's a huge tool and a huge asset.
And I know that you said you've got a all kinds of maritime equipment because of the 100 miles of water.
Right,
with
we do.
boats
We have a lot of boats and
marine.
a lot of marine equipment, so that's important to have.
Let's talk about the way that you pour into the kids in Livingston Parish. The Sheriff's Office has a couple of programs that really pour into the schools. Explain that. First, let's talk about DARE.
Yeah, our DARE program, well, we have a lot of programs, and our kids are our future. These are our future leaders, and we want to protect them, and we want to give them a good education and actually a chance of life,
right.
You know, and to make good decisions. So the DARE program is targeting 5th graders, and it not only just educates them about the dangerous and harmful effects of drugs, we also spend a lot of time on bullying, cyberbullying, and things that they're actually, the peer pressures. So you have a lot of that goes on in the school. So we spend a lot of time, and whenever you go to these graduations, and I attend to every one of them that I can, most all of them, watching these kids interact with the deputies. It's just phenomenal.
Creating a relationship.
Oh, a huge relationship and a trust and a bond. So that led us to start doing some more research on possible school resource officers. So we got with the Livingston Parish school system. They agreed to go in with me in half. So we was able to put 5 deputies, including a Dental Springs and a Walker officer. Excellent. That work with the DARE officers. Now these school resource officers are mentors. They'll go around to all the schools, which we have 45 schools, which is a lot and 25,000 plus students that we're responsible for to make sure they're safe. So at the end of the day, not only do you have a deputy in the school that is there to hopefully protect your kids, but they're there also to mentor them. So yeah, they carry weapons and they're in the school and they're there to protect, but that ain't what I don't want people to focus on. Right. We want to focus on the mentoring. I had a parent call me not too long ago. She had a child that was a troubled child, and he was having he was just struggling. Well, he actually clinged to one of my resource deputies. And this deputy was staying after school helping this child read and called him up on all his stuff and was able to help this kid pass the 7th grade.
Fantastic
Phenomenal.
story.
I mean, you can't beat that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what the program's about. So
tell the folks about the Explorer program.
We actually have an Explorer program, it's a bunch of junior deputies, but it's 14 to 18-year-olds. And we've actually provided them. These are kids that may want to get into law enforcement, or they just want something to do. Maybe they're not an athlete. Maybe they don't, have a lot of other things to do. They just want something to do. And so we take these kids and we train them just like a police officer. We teach them gun safety. We teach them how to park cars and traffic stops. And it really draws them in. And we send them to an academy every year. They usually go off to like a little summer camp for a week to 2 weeks. And with other explorers throughout the state, and it's really a neat program. This year they went to Birmingham, and they were able to meet a lot of officers from up there. So
tell the folks about your Christmas program, because that's really special.
Oh yeah, it is. Our Christmas program is something that's been going on that Sheriff Graves started when he was the chief deputy. We take care of roughly 1,600 kids every year
and give them toys.
So it's a great program.
Jason, thank you so much.
Thank you so
Pleasure having you back. This is Locke Meredith, Legal Lines. My special guest, the Sheriff of Livingston Parish, Jason Ard. Thanks for being with us.